you could possibly have should be answered. So happy to have them join us. Let's see, our goal with these Friday Digests are to make sure you can be an informed and confident conservation advocate. We are trying to give you the information, the tools, the resources, and anything else that you need to really step up and act on the advocacy opportunities in front of you, to be informed voters, and to have interesting conversations at cocktail parties. We need to hear from you on what you want to hear from us. So at the end, we're going to provide a survey in there, put any ideas you have about topics that you would like us to cover and any information that you really would like to learn about. So look for that at the end of the session. As you join today, please put your name in the chat and where you're from, just so we can be sure that we're tracking you and welcoming you to the Friday Digest. And as I mentioned, today we are talking about Maryland's Climate Pathway Plan. This was a long project in coming, although with very, very tight timelines. If you haven't seen it, the Climate Pathway Report was issued in June of 2023. It was required, the Climate Solutions Now Act that was passed in 2022 required the state to issue a plan. And the draft plan MDE put out in June. Since that time, they have been holding listening sessions all around the state and in all mechanisms, some in person, some virtually. I think they've had 5 or 6 listening sessions going well over an hour to get input from everybody. And I'd like to applaud MDE for their extensive effort to really get comments back on this plan. It's not too late for you to issue comments, and that's why we wanted to have this Friday Digest on the plan. Comments are due by October 15th, and we will talk to you a little bit about how to get those submitted at the end of the presentation here. MDE will take those comments and redo the report and make final recommendations on how Maryland can meet the 60% reduction in greenhouse gas emission goal by 2035. That's the goal that was set out. This plan is really telling the state how to do that. So it's a very, very important piece of work, and frankly is pivotal to the future of climate work in Maryland. So it's very important. So let's see. What we're covering today is the report is long and comprehensive, and there was a lot of modeling done. It was written by the University of Maryland Center for Global Sustainability, who did a great job with it. And they put forward basically a plan that says lots has to be done in a short time period by everyone. We're not going to go through every detail of that plan. Rather, we're going to focus on Maryland LCV's top priorities and what we're commenting on in regard to 2 areas: transportation and sorry, guys, I have a head cold, so I'm a little bit spacey. But transportation, and the other part we're going to focus on, Rebecca,
electricity.
Electricity, thank you. Those 2 are really key aspects of this report, and we feel need some focus. So that's where we're hoping you 2 will supply comments. So let's see, there's a summary there of the process that was used and where the comments, they're due by October 15th. And with that, I think let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so this slide is a summary, believe it or not, of what the end results of this plan should yield. And if you look at the far left of this bar chart, 2006, that's the amount of emissions that were coming out greenhouse gas emissions that were coming out in Maryland. And it was just over 120 megatons of CO2 equivalent. So the next chart, the next graph there is what has to be reduced to get to 60%. And thank you. And where we are in 2020. You can see the series, the electricity, transportation, buildings. These are all sectors that were modeled. And there's two aspects of what was done. One is, given the current policies that are on the books, and that's an important distinction. It's not what is being implemented currently, it's what is on the books, what can be achieved with those current policies. And then the colored aspects is what other policies can be put forward and what reductions can be absorbed from there. So that the plan then gets us at a 60% reduction by 2031. And you can see from how much is required from each of those sectors. That's the plan. And as I mentioned, we'll be focusing on electricity and transportation as the two biggest areas for today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca.
Great. Thanks, Kim. And really what we're doing with our recommendations is framing it up under our 100% clean energy by 2035 campaign. We're fully supportive of Governor Moore's commitment and gearing up a multi-year campaign to help reach this goal. And so what you're going to see today and what you're going to see coming from us in the next quite a while will be framed under 100% clean energy. So look out for more on that from us, including in today's chat about transportation and electricity. So starting with what's in the pathway report on electricity, they include current policies in place, and that's what you can see on the slide, and also add additional policies to get us to that 60% emissions reductions, including a regional greenhouse gas initiative target of 0 emissions by 2040, as well as a clean electricity standard that they model. But there's not a ton of detail on that clean electricity standard, but it is included as an additional policy to get us to that 60% emissions reductions. And so what Maryland LCV recommends in the electricity sector sort of spans two categories, similarly to the way that the pathway report is set up, which is reach our current goals, so existing policies. And Kim alluded to this earlier, that just because it's on the books doesn't necessarily it's being fully implemented. So when we say reach current goals, what we're really talking about is full implementation of things that are on the books. And that could take additional resources and focus and strategy. And so, for example, we have a solar goal on the books already. 14.5% carve out in our renewable portfolio standard is for solar. We're behind. We're behind in reaching that goal. And so what we need to reach that goal includes state leadership and specific guidance for onshore energy siting and permitting. And so that's really going to help us reach that existing solar goal, if not exceed it a little bit, which would be good. And then also full implementation of the Power Act. So that was a bill that passed this 2023 legislative session, the Promoting Offshore Wind Energy Resources Act. And what that did was set an offshore wind energy goal, 8.5 gigawatts by 2031, as well as requiring a transmission study and innovating a new way to pay for clean energy development in a more equitable way, both of which, that transmission piece and the equity piece, are key for rapid deployment of clean energy. And I should mention that all the priorities Maryland LCV is putting forward today in our comment on the pathway report and under the campaign of 100% clean energy are based on what we assess to be urgent actions that need administrative leadership and carry the opportunity not only to address climate impacts, but also health and equity. And so I think that's, you'll see our framing around that. And then also the new focus. So we have reach existing policies and the new focus area. So what we're really recommending here is that transmission piece and interconnection. So we need a way to connect and transmit all the new clean energy, so that solar and wind energy that we'd like to see generated, we need that to make it to the grid. And so we need improvements in investments in interconnection and transmission. And we also need, really the cleanest form of energy, if you will, is energy we never use. And so energy efficiency is going to be key. And we have, the state program called Empower, which is our focus on energy efficiency. But we need to reform that program so that the goals of Empower are aligned with our greenhouse gas emissions reductions goals. And so you'll see a new focus on the way we approach energy efficiency in the state. So when it comes to transportation, which is the largest source of emissions in the state, there are already a lot of important policies on the books to electrify vehicles, including the state fleet, reducing vehicle miles traveled. So if you ever see VMT as an acronym, that's vehicle miles traveled. We love a good alphabet soup in the environmental movement and in government. So that's what the VMT is. But that we reducing vehicle miles traveled and increasing public and active and accessible transportation. And the team at the Center for Global Sustainability modeled these, as well as an additional policy of a clean fleet standard and more targeted vehicle miles traveled reductions. So first, just in case you're wondering, like, wait a minute, you're talking about 100% clean energy transportation. Explain to me why transportation is in a clean energy framework. Well, it's important as we electrify everything, including our vehicles, which we know is a necessary part of our clean energy future. We're working in parallel to make sure the electricity powering those vehicles comes from clean sources. So we're taking that holistic view. While we know it's true that even powered by a dirty grid, an electric vehicle, emits less, will as a sum emit less than a gas-powered vehicle, it would be even better if that zero emission vehicle was powered by a zero emission grid. And so that's why when we think about transportation and our priorities in terms of transportation electrification, that's why it's critical that it's part of our 100% clean energy campaign. So I want to make sure we took a moment to explain that holistic view we're taking for our campaign. And so recommendations for focusing on current policies include swift implementation of regulations that make a very big difference, which includes that advanced clean trucks and clean cars rule, as well as dedicated funding for electric school buses and taking full advantage of that electric school bus pilot program, which was in the Climate Solutions Now Act. It's a really innovative partnership between the utilities and school districts, where the utilities can use the batteries in the school buses as added grid capacity in the summer, evenings, and weekends when the buses are not in peak use by students. And I really think it's this type of partnership and this type of innovative solution that is going to be a strong backbone to our clean energy future. And the more we can have these types of innovative partnerships and solutions, I think the more successful and the more quickly we're going to be successful. And so that's why we think that pilot program is really important. And following up on these priorities, the new focus would be an equity lens across those EV incentives and charging infrastructure. There's some of this work going on, but it's really important that as we think about people needing EV incentives to buy an electric vehicle, we're being thoughtful about equity and thinking about overburdened and underserved communities in our vehicle electrification future. And when it comes to environmental justice, the Pathway Report does outline broader societal impacts. And how they do that is through an analysis of co-benefits of the implemented policies. So that's saying, it's 2031, we've reached our 60% emissions reductions. And as a result, we also see significant improvements in air quality. And when we see those air quality improvements, we also see health benefits. Fewer hospital admissions from asthma, fewer days of school missed. And so that's a really important justification for climate policy. And they put numbers to it, right? $293 to $667 million per year in health benefits from air quality improvements, and also 6,600 new jobs created. So there's that huge economic potential. And these are important numbers supporting these policies. But I will say it is a retrospective view of the benefits. And our recommendations on environmental justice encourage a more proactive approach and framing policies and funding with a justice 40 and a cumulative impacts lens. And so we think that's a really important part of our clean energy future. So while we focus today on those two largest sectors of emissions, there's plenty to do within the electricity and transportation sectors that will make a big difference. There are other important policies the state should consider, and many of which are included in the pathway report, and some of which are being worked on right now, which include building energy performance standards. So we're not just electrifying our vehicles, we're electrifying our buildings, and MDE is writing those regulations right now. Also removing the exemption of the manufacturing sector from the greenhouse gas emissions reductions requirements. The pathway report was very clear that we need to take an all of society approach to climate solutions. And so that means all of society. That means every sector is responsible for some part of our emissions reductions. And when we talk about a definition of clean energy, with a move to 100% clean energy, we have the opportunity to revisit our definition of clean and renewable energy, and we can prioritize state investments in wind and in solar. And then finally, forest conservation, which is going to be really important when we talk about that 2045 net zero goal. And so we passed forest conservation legislation this past session, and that's going to be part of our net zero energy future as well. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Kim to let you know what you can do and take us into Q&A. Thanks all. Kim, you're still on mute.
Told you I had a cold. So here on your screen, you see a QR code that you can click on, or there's a link there. And on our website, we have a place where you can hook into and sign on to comments that would go to MDE. You can also get information on how to submit your own comments as well. So we really, Mark can actually speak to this, the importance of getting input from everybody. It's not just businesses and industry and advocates, it's really people, Marylanders that care. And so they want to hear from you. So let me turn, actually ask Mark to get on camera here. And I have two questions for you that have come in. One is the Climate Solutions Now Act set a goal of 60% reduction by 2031 and a net zero by 2045. Does the report deal with both of those goals or just one? And then the other question, I'll just ask you both of them right now, has to do with the other side of the equation. What about sequestration and adaptation? And were those considerations in the report as well?
Yeah, thanks for asking and thanks for inviting me here today. So hi, everyone. Mark Stewart, Climate Change Program Manager at MDE. And the requirements for the report that came out in June and the plan, the state's plan that'll come out at the end of this year is to map out the policies that are needed to achieve Maryland's goal of reducing gross greenhouse gas emissions 60% by 2031. What's not included in that goal per se is carbon sequestration in natural and working lands, because it's a gross emissions goal. That said, just to clarify, so the plan that we'll put out will have to show a path to reducing actual emissions 60% by 2031 and put us on track to achieve a net zero by 2045 goal. So on one hand, the carbon sequestration activities are not highlighted and emphasized in the pathway report because they don't contribute to achieving the 60% reduction goal by 2031. However, they're very important for achieving a net zero goal. And we have to, if you want trees to be part of the solution 20 years from now, they better be going in the ground now or a few years ago, right? There's a sort of a peak period for trees to sequester CO2, and it's not in the first few years of their life. So we need to be focused on those investments in the near term. We are definitely keeping that in our mindset as we develop the plan to achieve Maryland's 2031 goal. and set us on that path for net zero by 2045.
Thank you, Mark. And Mark also staffs the Maryland Commission on Climate Change, which has a subgroup, a working group on adaptation. And if I'm correct, Mark, that group is writing a report around adaptation and sequestration that should be out later in 2024. Am I right on that?
I think that they've pushed it into 24, but I'd have to double check my notes now to remember.
The good news is they're working on it, so it's coming. Excellent, thank you. Rebecca, I want to turn to you and have you dig a little bit into the electricity sector, including storage and reliability. And then also, if you can give a little bit of background on the PJM, the grid, and what kind of influence do we have in shaping how electricity is transmitted?
Sure. And Mark can back me up or correct me if I say anything. But I think, storage is a great question. And I think when Maryland LCV is looking at clean energy, it's the sources, wind and solar, and transmission and storage, right? We are taking that holistic view. And when it comes to storage, the Maryland General Assembly passed a energy storage program that the PSC is responsible now for moving forward. And that has a goal of 3,000 megawatts of storage by 2030. And so we do want to see much more energy storage come online in the next seven years, so six years, so we can meet that goal. And that's how we're going to be able to meet peak demand. Storage is important because you can visualize it in the sense that when everybody comes home at 5 o'clock and turns on their lights, turns on the AC, there's this peak increased in the grid. And when you're running a coal-fired power plant, you can shovel more coal into the power plant and charge, sort of jumpstart the grid with more energy. You can't say, hey, wind, it's 5 o'clock. It would be great if you could just blow a little more. I'd really appreciate it. Like, hey, sun, it's 5. If you could just, the clouds are really in the way. Just move because people are coming home from work. Doesn't work that way, right? But that's where batteries come in. And batteries are going to, when it's really windy at, I don't know, midnight and everybody's lights are off, batteries can capture that wind energy and then bring it onto the grid when that peak demand. So maybe that helps explain why batteries are so important in transitioning us to that clean energy economy. And so we want to see more batteries. What we do want to see, though, is make sure there are safety standards when it comes to batteries, that communities are engaged in where those storage facilities are placed, and that the storage facilities close to communities are benefiting those communities. So we do have some recommendations, and we're working on sort of ideas around safety standards for those facilities to have that community engagement and environmental justice and cumulative impacts lens on clean energy infrastructure as well. So long answer on batteries, but they're really important. PJM is our grid. And that's Pennsylvania, Jersey, and Maryland, but it's actually like 11 states that are part of the grid. And sort of when people talk about the grid, it feels like this ominous thing out there, like the grid. But it's how we power our homes, right? It's where our electricity comes from. And so PJM is an organization that runs our grid. And we, the PSC has a relationship with, the Maryland Energy Administration has a relationship with PJM. And they, sort of the utilities have a relationship with PJM. And so we need to work closely with PJM and those who run our grid to make sure that, permits and applications and projects that have to get approved by the PSC to be connected to the grid, that's a streamlined process and goes quickly. So we have some limited advocacy ability with PJM, but it's really, working with the PSC and MEA. And Mark, I don't know if you want to sort of jump in and other ideas on what our relationship is with PJM, but that's some of what's needed is a streamlining of, getting projects that are in the queue to come online. There's a lot of solar projects sort of stuck in the queue in line to come on, through PJM, and we need to make sure that those get online quickly.
You nailed it, Rebecca. I got nothing to add to that. Good job.
Mark, let me ask you about the role of local government, local counties, state fleets, really the government's aspect and responsibility under this plan.
Yeah, the Climate Solutions Now Act sets specific requirements for state facilities and state vehicles to have to, well, for the facilities to have to run increasingly on clean electricity, for the vehicles to transition to electric vehicles. You know, the state doesn't set requirements on county-owned equipment, right? That's up to the counties, and many counties are making their own climate plans and making those investments, which is wonderful. But we do have some very firm requirements on the state vehicle fleet to electrify. We also notably, you know, have requirements on vehicle manufacturers to have to sell more and more electric vehicles in the state. So we are among the states that have adopted California's, you know, leading regulations called Advanced Clean Cars 2, which will require manufacturers to sell increasing volumes of electric vehicles and other zero emission vehicles in the state, really transitioning fully over the next 10 years to a by 2035 only zero emission vehicles would be sold in Maryland. So, you know, obviously that's a regulation that trickles down to every sort of, you know, municipal operation and otherwise. But I do expect, because of some of the federal funding that's out there for local governments, and based on what we're seeing in terms of these local government climate plans, that we're going to see pretty rapid adoption of you know, all sorts of electric vehicles. Important to note, though, there's still classes of electric vehicles, dump trucks and other things, where or classes of vehicles where there are not many you know, electrified options yet. So it's going to take time in the medium and heavy duty sector, heavy duty vehicle sector, definitely a slower transition than the light duty vehicle sector.
Right. And I like the word yet, because they're coming. We need to wrap up, but let me ask both of you for a 20-second response on what people can and should be doing to support this plan. And I'm going to start with Rebecca.
Great. mdlcv.org/climate-plan. We have a sign-on opportunity for you ready to go. Have your voice heard as part of this process. What we say in the next few weeks will influence 8 years of policymaking. Your voice matters, and we're here to support you.
And Mark, can you speak to the importance of hearing from the residents and people in Maryland?
There are big political decisions that need to be made in the coming months, and I think that our politicians are hearing a lot of voices, you know, on every side of this debate. You know, stay active, stay engaged, make sure that your voices are heard in terms of your commitment to this transition.
Thank you both for joining me today. And I want to thank you guys for signing on and hearing about the report. We're here for any questions. Please contact us. Also, October 5th, 5:30, the best environmental gathering in the state is happening. So if you're interested in joining us for Changemakers, our annual big event, please go to the website and sign up. I would encourage you to get tickets. We are super close to being sold out. And the secret news that is going to be public very soon, but you're hearing it from me, our keynote, Governor Wes Moore. So it'll be a really fun evening. So please join us there. Thank you very much. We're going to send you a survey. We want to hear from you. Please fill it out. Let us know what you want to hear from us. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.